Well, welcome to the Crusades. We have been getting to the end of our Middle Ages unit. We saw that Black Death over those years is going to create a drastic decrease of our serfs and peasants, which is then going to make the whole manor system not function as properly as it should have. Remember, it was all based on that system and everyone doing duties for themselves. One unifying force was always the church. And the Pope is going to come to the people, no matter what place or what parts of the manors they are, and say, let's go fight against these Muslim rulers who are trying to take over this holy land, which they consider to be the foundation of Christianity. Muslims also want to take ownership of it, and Jews also have a standing there. So, Deus Vult, they cried, and the Crusades began. It was the Christians of Western Europe, and they were going to the Holy Land, which we consider to be modern-day Jerusalem. And the Holy Land was sacred to the Christians. And it was over 200 years the Christians were fighting pretty unsuccessfully, actually, to recapture it. Religious leaders promised some spiritual rewards. Pope Urban II was calling people to come and to fight. They said they'd be forgiven for all their sins. They'd have a chance to go to heaven, that they would be able to work through any kind of lower income issues. They'd have a chance to be seen higher. Peasants or serfs knew that that would be something that they would be able to get higher standing in the community, but it also led to a lot of unpreparedness because we weren't really nations. No one was really fighting as one force. The Pope's just calling for people to come, and leaders are coming with knights who have never been prepared to fight in these kind of conditions. There was a chance for a lot of economic rewards. We're going to expand and start to see trade again because we're going to go in lands like Constantinople that have been consistently trading. Some thought they could escape, this manor life that they were restricted in. And they're going to get more wealth and land and get higher economic status. So our first crusade, there were many. We're just going to highlight a few that were significant. Peter the Hermit recruited peasants, and the poor knight Walter the Penniless took in people to come fight. They first attacked the Jews on the way to the Holy Land. They were weakened, though, because by the time they actually got there, half of their supplies were gone, most of their men were gone, and Crusaders were easily defeated once they reached there. The Muslims were organized. They had been going to different lands to fight and to take lands for hundreds of years, and they're going to gain control. Now, the Crusaders are going to eventually get more people involved in the Second Crusade. So they bring together two leaders, King Conrad of Germany and King Louis of France. Now, with that being said, saying you're a leader of an area is pretty loose at this point. Again, we don't have boundaries and set areas. We've been living in these small, isolated manor lands. So King Conrad gets lost on his way, dies from dehydration and heat stroke, and wanders so far in the Middle East he's never seen. King Louis lost his men. He's waiting for Conrad to show. Finally, when what was left of them kindly met up together, they were exhausted, could barely fight, and both were easily defeated. Christian Crusaders lose. Third Crusade, kind of no winner in this one. Muslims had a great leader named Saladin, and he is going to retake the Jerusalem in 1189. And there are going to be three different rulers who are going to rule to kind of try to fight together against Saladin. But again, we weren't coordinated. We didn't have a lot of discussion beforehand. We were very disorganized. So Richard the Lionheart of England, the Robin Hood king, is the only one who actually makes it there. Frederick Barbarossa of Germany never reaches the Holy Land. He drowns in a river trying to cross it. Philip Augustus of France is going to get an argument with Richard, and then he's not going to make it. And so really it was just Richard fighting alone. But actually the two of the leaders here from opposing sides, the Saladin from the Muslims and Richard from the Christian Crusaders, actually began to respect one another. And they negotiated and fought for months, but eventually came upon an agreement that the Holy Land would stay in the hands of the Muslims. Christian pilgrims could visit it in peace, but really there was no resolution, just kind of stay out of each other's way. Unfortunately, we see a shift into the Fourth Crusade. We're not really fighting for this Holy Land, this Pope calling people for chances of heaven. It starts to become economic. We start to see that knights and leaders have seen that going to these lands outside of Europe, getting involved in the trade, even taking over lands if they could by kind of ransacking them, they were able to get more financial stability and move into cities. So on the Fourth Crusade, a large army of European knights didn't even make it to the Holy Land. They get caught up in disputes in Constantinople. They take different goods and things that they want. They take control of the city. And many of them don't even continue to fight into the Holy Land. And they just took their goods and went home. The small band of knights that did go to finish the journey in the Holy Land were defeated quickly, and the Christian crusaders lose again. Now, there was a lot of sadness going on this time. You've had the Black Death, you've had people losing their family members to the wars and the Crusades. And so there are a lot of orphan children, and many young boys kind of band together. There were two in particular that convinced a bunch of them to go with each other to the Holy Land. Now, they were children your guys' age, maybe 12, 11, 10, and they were banding together, and they thought that God would protect them. He would make the Mediterranean Sea passable, crossable, maybe roll it back like Moses in the parting of the Red Sea, if you're familiar with that story. But it didn't depart, and so many of them turned to go back home, and other of them were taken in by pirates and sold into slavery. Big effects from the Crusades. One, it was a failure for the Christians did not capture the Holy Land. They were not united, and they were going against much more well-organized, united Muslim forces. They weren't prepared also for the Middle Eastern climate. Remember, they're wearing heavy metal nightwear. We talked about 60 to 90 pounds of armor at any time on their bodies. They had to travel long distance even to fight. They were on horseback, which again, horses don't do well without water either. For almost 200 years, soldiers, fought for Europe, but in 1300, the Europeans began losing interest in it. And the West and Atlantic Ocean had caught attention of Europeans. And we started to say, okay, instead of going to fight in this Holy Land, this desert, why don't we get on these more improved ships now that trade's back again, and let's go see if we can find some new land to actually colonize and control, because they saw the benefits of a place like Constantinople. Maybe we can find this in other lands, and they'll find this in India, sub-Saharan Africa, and North and South America eventually. So again, trade is back in the market, expansion. We're getting new materials like the things that were on the Silk Road, like spices and silks, pearls. We have this desire for luxury items. So the Crusades, along like the Black Death, are going to help to end feudalism. We're going to reopen trade so we don't have to just produce in our self-sufficient, self-contained manners. People wanted new items and needed money, not just promises to buy them. So we're going to see a big change. The common man had a much more better understanding of the world. You wouldn't have just known what your manner was. You're going to kind of come out of the Dark Ages. We're going to see this time period we'll get into next called the Renaissance, or the rebirth, when art and music and trade and goods are all going to come back in our lives. And that's the Crusades. Another one of those causes for the end of feudalism.